Welcome to a journey into the hidden logic of achievement. We often tell a very specific story about success, one that focuses almost entirely on the individual. We look at the outliers, the people who occupy the far edges of human achievement, and we assume they got there because of their own intelligence, ambition, and grit. We treat them like giants who rose from the earth through sheer force of will. But in his book, Outliers, Malcolm Gladwell argues that this self-made man narrative is fundamentally flawed. If we want to understand why some people thrive while others fail, we have to look beyond the person and start looking at the world around them, their culture, their family, their generation, and even their birth date. This shift in perspective begins in a tiny town in Pennsylvania called Roseto. In the 1950s, a physician named Stuart Wolfe discovered something nearly impossible. In Roseto, virtually no one under the age of 55 died of heart disease. At a time when heart attacks were an absolute epidemic in America, the people of Roseto were essentially dying only of old age. Wolfe investigated their diet, thinking perhaps they ate the healthy fare of the old world, but he found they cooked with lard and smoked heavily. He looked at their genetics and their geography, but those didn't provide the answer either. The secret of Roseto was Roseto itself. It was their community, the three-generational households, the neighbors chatting on porches, and the egalitarian social structure that insulated them from the stresses of modern life. This was an outlier in health, and it teaches us that we cannot understand the individual without understanding the culture and forest they inhabit. This same logic applies to the world of professional sports, specifically Canadian hockey. We like to think that hockey is a pure meritocracy where the best players rise to the top solely because of their talent. But if you look at the roster of any elite team, like the Medicine Hat Tigers, an incredible pattern emerges. An overwhelming number of the players were born in the first 3 months of the year. This isn't astrology, it's the result of an arbitrary eligibility cutoff of January 1st. A boy who turns 10 on January 2nd is playing against a child who won't turn 10 until December. At that age, a 12-month gap in physical maturity is massive. Coaches mistake that maturity for ability, and those older kids are selected for all-star squads. This is what sociologists call a cumulative advantage. Because these kids are slightly older, they get better coaching, more practice, and more games. And by the time they're teenagers, they actually are better because they were given an early opportunity they didn't necessarily earn. Success in these fields is the result of the Matthew effect, named after the biblical verse, "For unto everyone that hath shall be given." This leads us to the famous 10,000-hour rule. While we often obsess over innate talent, researchers have found that the thing distinguishing elite performers from everyone else is simply the amount of time they practice. Whether it's violinists at a Berlin academy or chess grandmasters, the magic number for true expertise appears to be 10,000 hours. But 10,000 hours is an enormous amount of time. It is almost impossible to reach that number by yourself before you're a young adult. You need extraordinary opportunities to put in the work. Take the story of Bill Joy, the computer legend who co-founded Sun Microsystems. Joy was brilliant, but he was also lucky enough to attend the University of Michigan in 1971, exactly when they had one of the first time-sharing computer systems in the world. Before time-sharing, programming was done with tedious punch cards. Joy, however, could program for 8 or 10 hours a day because of a software bug that let him stay on the system for free. By the time he went to graduate school, he had already reached his 10,000 hours. He was a genius, yes, but he was a genius who happened to stumble into a computing Hamburg. The Beatles had a similar stroke of luck. Before they came to America, they were invited to play in Hamburg, Germany, at strip clubs that forced them to perform for 8 hours a night, 7 nights a week. By the time they had their first burst of fame, they had performed live an estimated 1,200 times, more than most bands perform in their entire careers. They didn't just have talent, they had a crucible that allowed them to master their craft. Even Bill Gates fits this pattern. In 1968, when almost no colleges had computer access, Gates' private 7th grade class had a computer terminal with a direct link to a mainframe. Because he was born in 1955, he was exactly the right age to take advantage of the personal computer revolution of 1975. If he had been born just a few years earlier or later, that specific window of opportunity would have been closed. The same holds true for the titans of the industrial age, like John D. Rockefeller and Andrew Carnegie. 14 of the 75 richest people in human history were Americans, born within 9 years of each other in the mid-19th century. They were the perfect age when the railroads were built and the economy was remade. Success, then, is a matter of demographic luck as much as it is ambition. However, intelligence only takes you so far. There's a threshold for IQ. Once you hit a score of about 120, additional points don't translate into more real-world success. This is illustrated by the story of Chris Langan, often called the smartest man in America, with an IQ of 195. Despite his brilliance, Langan has had a career marked by frustration and isolation. He grew up in extreme poverty with an abusive stepfather and was never taught how to navigate the world's institutions. Gladwell contrasts Langan with Robert Oppenheimer, the scientific director of the Manhattan Project. Oppenheimer was also a genius, but when he tried to poison his tutor at Cambridge, he possessed the practical intelligence to negotiate his way into being put on probation instead of being expelled. This savvy, knowing what to say to whom and how to say it for maximum effect, is a set of skills learned from our families. Sociologist Annette Lareau found that middle-class parents engage in concerted cultivation, teaching their children to assert themselves and negotiate with authority. Poor parents often follow a path of natural growth, leaving their children to develop a sense of constraint and distrust of authority. Langan lacked the entitlement that the wealthy Oppenheimer was raised with, proving that the social structure of our upbringing is as critical as our mental firepower. We see this interplay of culture and opportunity again in the career of Joe Flom, the legendary lawyer. Flom was a Jewish immigrant son who was locked out of the prestigious white shoe law firms of the 1940s because of his antecedents. This forced him to take the bottom-rung work those firms disdained, hostile takeovers and litigation. For 20 years, he perfected a craft that no one else wanted to touch. Then, in the 1970s, the world changed. Takeovers became the biggest business on Wall Street, and suddenly, Flom was the only one with 10,000 hours of experience in the most valuable field of law. His success wasn't just about his brilliance, it was about the meaningful work of his parents in the garment industry, and being born in a demographic trough in the 1930s, which gave him the best public schools and the easiest job market. Culture also casts a long shadow on how we behave in the modern world. In Harlan, Kentucky, 19th century family feuds were the result of a culture of honor brought over by Scotch-Irish herdsmen. In a herding culture, you must be aggressive to prevent your livelihood from being stolen. This legacy persists today, as seen in experiments where Southern students react with much higher levels of testosterone and aggression to a minor insult compared to Northerners. This cultural legacy can even affect the safety of modern aviation. In the 1990s, Korean Air had a loss rate 17 times higher than United Airlines. The problem wasn't the planes or the pilot's skills, but the Power Distance Index, PDI, the culture's attitude toward hierarchy. In a high PDI culture, a first officer might be too intimidated to challenge a captain's mistake, using mitigated speech or subtle hints instead of direct commands. Planes crash when the cockpit communication fails. Korean Air turned itself around only when they forced their pilots to speak English, the language of the aviation world, which allowed them to step outside their hierarchical cultural roles and communicate as equals. Finally, we find a different kind of cultural legacy in the extraordinary success of Asians at mathematics. This advantage starts with language. Asian number systems are logical and brief, allowing children to hold more numbers in their memory loop and learn basic math concepts much faster than Western children. But it also stems from the rice paddy. Wet rice farming is 10 to 20 times more labor-intensive than Western farming, requiring a staggering 3,000 hours of work a year. This created a culture that prizes persistence and doggedness. In math, the students who succeed aren't necessarily the ones with the highest IQs. They're the ones like Renee, who are willing to struggle with a single problem for 22 minutes until they make sense of it. This belief in the miracle of hard work is what makes the KIPP Academy in the South Bronx so successful. KIPP takes kids from one of the poorest neighborhoods in America and gets them to perform as well as privileged suburban kids by simply giving them more time. They recognize that the achievement gap between rich and poor is actually a summer vacation problem. Wealthy kids continue to learn over the summer, while poor kids often lose ground. KIPP students like Marita make a bargain. They get up at 5:45 a.m., stay in school until 5 p.m., and do hours of homework every night. They're replacing their old cultural legacy with a new one based on the rice paddy's logic of persistence. Ultimately, outliers are not people who did it all by themselves. They are the beneficiaries of hidden advantages and extraordinary opportunities. To build a better world, we need to stop being in awe of those who succeed and start focusing on the sunlight and the soil. We need to replace a patchwork of lucky breaks with a society that provides opportunities for everyone. Think of success as a forest, where the tallest oak is not just the hardiest seed, it is the tree that was given the most sunlight, the richest soil, and was lucky enough to avoid the lumberjack's axe while it was still a sapling. We focus on the seeds, but the forest is what truly makes the tree.